Sometimes, indeed, the apparent non-difference of a cause and its effect fails to prove true, and at other times the product of something real is illusory. Furthermore, this world cannot be permanently real, for it partakes of the natures of not only the absolute reality, but also the illusion disguising that reality. Actually, the visible forms of this world are just an imaginary arrangement resorted to by a succession of ignorant persons in order to facilitate their material affairs. With their various meanings and implications, the learned words of your Vedas bewilder all persons whose minds have been dulled by hearing the incantations of sacrificial rituals. Since this universe did not exist prior to its creation, and will no longer exist after its annihilation, we conclude that in the interim it is nothing more than a manifestation imagined to be visible within you, whose spiritual enjoyment never changes. We liken this universe to the transformation of various material substances into diverse forms. Certainly those who believe that this figment of the imagination is substantially real are less intelligent. The illusory material nature attracts the minute living entity to embrace her, and as a result, he assumes forms composed of her qualities. Subsequently, he loses all his spiritual qualities and must undergo repeated deaths. You, however, avoid the material energy in the same way that a snake abandons its old skin. Glorious in your possession of 8 mystic perfections, you enjoy unlimited opulences. Members of the renounced order who fail to uproot the last traces of material desire in their hearts remain impure, and thus you do not allow them to understand you. Although you are present within their hearts, for them you are like a jewel worn around the neck of a man who has totally forgotten it is there. O Lord, those who practice yoga only for sense gratification must suffer punishment both in this life and the next, from death, who will not release them, and from you, whose kingdom they cannot reach. When a person realizes you, he no longer cares about his good and bad fortune arising from past pious and sinful acts, since it is you alone who control this good and bad fortune. Such a realized devotee also disregards what ordinary living beings say about him. Every day he fills his ears with your glories, which are recited in each age by the unbroken succession of Manu's descendants, and thus you become his ultimate salvation. Because you are unlimited, neither the lords of heaven nor even you yourself can ever reach the end of your glories. The countless universes, each enveloped in its shell, are compelled by the wheel of time to wander within you, like particles of dust blowing about in the sky. The Shrutis, following their method of eliminating everything separate from the Supreme, become successful by revealing you as their final conclusion. The Supreme Lord, Sri Narayan Rishi, said, having heard these instructions about the Supreme Self, the personality of Godhead, the sons of Brahma, now understood their final destination. They felt properly satisfied and honored Sanandan with their worship. Thus the ancient saints who travel in the upper heavens distilled this nectarine and confidential essence of all the Vedas and Puranas. And as you wander the earth at will, my dear son of Brahma, you should faithfully meditate on these instructions concerning the science of the self, which burn up the material desires of all men. When Sri Narayan Rishi ordered him in this way, the self-possessed sage Narad, whose vow is as heroic as a warrior's, accepted the command with firm faith. Now successful in all his purposes, he thought about what he had heard, O king, and replied to the Lord as follows. I offer my obeisances to him of spotless fame, the Supreme Lord Krishna, who manifests his all-attractive personal expansions so that all living beings can achieve liberation. After saying this, Narad bowed down to Sri Narayan Rishi, the foremost of sages, and also to his saintly disciples. He then returned to the hermitage of my father Vaipayana Vyas. Vyasadeva, the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, respectfully greeted Narad Muni and offered him a seat, which he accepted. Narad then described to Vyas what he had heard from the mouth of Sri Narayan Rishi. Thus I have replied to the question you asked me, O king, concerning how the mind can have access to the absolute truth, which is indescribable by material words and devoid of material qualities. He is the Lord who eternally watches over this universe, who exists before, during, and after its manifestation. He is the master of both the unmanifest material energy and the spirit soul. After sending forth the creation, he enters within it, accompanying each living entity. There he creates the material bodies, and then remains as their regulator. By surrendering to him, one can escape the embrace of illusion, just as a dreaming person forgets his own body. One who wants liberation from fear should constantly meditate upon him, Lord Hari, who is always on the platform of perfection and thus never subject to material birth. Thus ends the 87th chapter of the 10th canto of the Shrimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Prayers of the Personified Vedas.